Welcome to Where We Learn, Customizing Your Class. We all know that first impressions matter, so what's the impression your class gives once it's been created? So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a class, as we saw in the previous videos, but in this class we're going to focus on the notice board element of the class, which is what someone sees as a student when they first log into Where We Learn and they're logging into your class. We start with a class with a name that we recognize. We don't have to fill anything here, but we're going to start to customize. We're going to add information and settings and colors to this. So first things first, let's set a tagline for our class. This tagline is anything you like. We're able to choose a primary color for coloring buttons on the background of buttons when you identify it. Or when you are to press this button, what image would you like? So here's Pixabay. We use this frequently for commercial free imagery. We choose an image which looks fantastic, and we're going to use that as our image for our button. We right click, choose the address, and we simply paste it in. We can go forth and add more images for different aspects used throughout the system. So we add one for the button, which is the image, and we add one for the background, which is frequently used at various different times. We have a choice of font. We update. It's as simple as that. But what does our notice board look like? What the student sees? Up in the top right, we have a button to drop us in. And this is an empty notice board. It has nothing on it, but it's a nice 3D effect notice board. So let's add some style to it. There are two other tabs. First one is, if you don't want to go the full 3D, you can always revert to 2D. This gives you buttons along the top, and that's swapping between the interfaces, but you can't really see any difference because we haven't styled any of the different faces. To make things simpler, I'm going to put the two side by side so that we can make changes to the settings and then very quickly see what those setting changes look like. It's simply a case of tearing the tab out of the browser. So let's change this back to 3D, and we just refresh our page on the right, and as you can see, there's our 3D interfaces kicked back in again. So let's go do some more customization. We simply hit back. We're going to use back and forth a lot in this. So let's go to notice board faces. This is where we can have influence over every face of that 3D cube or every one of the faces of the tab. We can set a predominant color. We can set its transparency, or we can set a custom image. So let's just set a color to see what happens. Refreshing our browser over on the right, you'll notice now that the color has been set to a bright red. You'll also notice the transparency on the other faces. Now, if we set the alpha or the transparency to 1, it makes the color solid, so you can no longer see through that color. You can see through the other faces. You get the idea of how we're going to be able to tweak this. But if we set the alpha to a very low number, it becomes more of a tint, a barely noticeable color, and the effect of being able to see what's on the other faces kicks in. So now, being able to do this, we can also set a custom image, and we can also set the text for when no messages or no outlines are available. So we can actually customize the messages per face to whatever we want to be able to say. This can help differentiate between the different faces and allow you to set custom messages. We're also going to style it green just to show the change in effect. Again, a quick refresh, and we see it's a slight tint, but we can see the wording has changed. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to set a full background image, and we're going to show you that the transparency can also kick in. Back over to Pixabay, let's pick up another image, tons of choices. Right click, choose copy image address as always, into our text box, and we paste it in. An image will overwrite the color, so the tint's going to disappear, but the image is there and the transparency level is also there, but it's a bit too transparent. So we go back into the face and we're able to set it such that you can't see through it as much. Generally 0.7, 0.8 are strong enough for most of the different ones you'll put. For an extra bit of contrast, we're going to put in a second face. We're going to put a second image on a second face, and we just paste that in. With all of these options, you can come back and customize these as often as you want. And as times change, as it becomes autumn and winter, you can actually completely thematically change the interface. But essentially, we're just going through and coloring, adding images to interface. But as you can see, it's starting to pick up that wow effect. This is where you're going to be interacting with your students, being able to offer stuff and making it visually very attractive. Setting the images to 1, so removing all the transparency, turns it into a very solid brick interface. But as you can see, when you're only on one face at a time, it becomes not as cool, in my opinion, as when you're able to have a little bit of transparency to see through. So setting it to a 0.8 or a 0.9, you also have to be conscious of the images because the white text can sometimes vanish in one of your images. So just be conscious of how it's used. We can also set a background to the entire notice board itself. So this is the standard corkboard that's available, again an image from Pixabay. Or we can set it to an animated or movie-based background. You can also do this as well. It just needs an MP4. As you can see, there's a little bit of movement, but because we're windowed, it doesn't show the animation as well. So what we'll do is we'll maximize the window, and you can see that the animation is playing away in the background. You can get very creative with what you want to do. Quite simply, an MP4 pasted into that background. That video clip is from a website called YouTube Stock. So for example, we're just going to pick up an image. Once again, we can grab any images we want, paste the image in, update, and let's have a look at our background. The background changes and all of our faces are very interactive and colorful. That cube is responsive, which means it will change size based on the device it's on. So you don't have to worry about sizing. The CSS is going to do that for you. In lesson 209, we have a look at customizing the messages that appear on the different faces and tabs. There are loads more videos to explore and tools for us to use, so please explore and enjoy learning with WhereWeLearn.